A $20,000 disposable drone takes flight. Its target is a $300 million American radar installation. The math is brutal. The United States is spending millions to swat down weapons that cost the equivalent of a used car. That lopsided math is fueling a standoff that has pushed the US and Iran to the edge of full-scale war. The goal today is to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Yet, the very nuclear program the United States is currently trying to destroy is the one they built and handed to Iran in the first place. To understand this irony, we have to look back to the 1950s. At the time, Western nations relied heavily on Iranian oil. Facilities like the Abadan refinery pumped massive volumes of crude to run European and American economies. But the agreements ensured the profits were siphoned out of the country, leaving the local population in poverty. Today's missile exchanges are the climax of a 70-year struggle over exactly who gets to control and profit from the energy reserves of the Middle East. That struggle formally began in 1951, when Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh decided the extraction had to stop. He nationalized Iran's oil reserves, arguing that the wealth of the land should benefit the people living on it. The response from the West was immediate. The CIA and Britain's MI6 launched Operation Ajax, dismantling the elected government and placing the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, into absolute power. He was a compliant ally, ready to sign oil deals on American terms. To reward their new ally, the United States launched the Atoms for Peace program in 1957. Washington handed over an entire nuclear ecosystem, building the Tehran Nuclear Research Center and training Iranian scientists at MIT. By dismantling a local democracy to secure cheap oil, the U.S. got its short-term fix. But they failed to realize that the nuclear foundation they were pouring would eventually be inherited by a population furious at the foreign interference that destroyed their government. By 1971, Washington faced a major macroeconomic crisis. President Richard Nixon severed the U.S. dollar's tie to gold. Without that physical backing, other nations began losing trust in the dollar, threatening America's financial dominance. The solution was a masterstroke of strategic leverage. In 1974, the U.S. brokered a deal with the Saudi royal family. Saudi Arabia and the OPEC nations would sell their oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. In return, the United States guaranteed military protection for the Saudi monarchy. This diagram illustrates petrodollar recycling. Because every country needs oil, every country is forced to hold U.S. dollars to buy it. Those dollars pool in the Middle East and are then reinvested straight back into U.S. Treasury bonds, injecting massive capital directly into the American economy. The U.S. uses that capital to build the most powerful military on the planet, which in turn ensures the cycle never stops. When leaders like Iraq's Saddam or Libya's Gaddafi tried to sell their oil in euros or gold, they met overwhelming U.S. military force. America's massive military presence in the region acts as a security detail for the petrodollar engine.
This footprint is a prerequisite for maintaining the global currency demand that guarantees superpower status. That system hit a roadblock in 1979. A popular revolution threw the US-backed Shah out of Iran. A year later, Saddam Hussein invaded the country. During that 8-year war, US intelligence actively assisted Iraq, even as Saddam deployed chemical weapons against Iranian civilians. The Iranian leadership realized that conventional warfare and international law offered them no protection. They pivoted to the ultimate strategic deterrent, nuclear capability. This gauge breaks down how that deterrent works. Raw uranium has very little of the specific isotope needed for a reaction. Concentrating that material is called enrichment. Around 3 to 5% is used for civilian electricity, but pushing that concentration to 90% creates the fuel for a nuclear bomb. In 2015, the Obama administration signed a deal that capped Iran's enrichment at 3.67%. But 3 years later, Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. and imposed maximum pressure sanctions that devastated the Iranian economy and cut off access to basic medicines. The maximum pressure campaign backfired. Iran accelerated its program, enriching uranium past 60% and pushing right to the threshold of a nuclear breakout. With Iran that close to a weapon, why hasn't the U.S. just invaded? The answer lies in the terrain. Iran is 4 times larger than Iraq, shielded by the sheer cliffs of the Zagros Mountains, a natural fortress that makes a ground invasion a logistical nightmare. Knowing they cannot win a head-to-head fight, Iran adopted a mosaic doctrine. They decentralized their military into 31 independent provincial commands and buried their production lines deep inside mountain bunkers, out of reach of conventional bombs. This chart shows the financial discrepancy of their asymmetric strategy. Iran fires waves of disposable drones that cost $20,000 each. To stop them, the U.S. must fire interceptors that cost between $4 and $15 million per shot. Iran doesn't need to defeat the U.S. military on a battlefield. They simply need to make the financial and logistical cost of the conflict too high for America to sustain. Beyond the economic drain of attrition, Iran wields a geographic trump card, the Strait of Hormuz. This tiny 33-kilometer waterway handles 20% of the entire world's oil supply. Iran doesn't need a massive navy to win here. If they strike just one commercial tanker, insurance companies will instantly refuse to cover any vessels entering the Gulf. Global trade freezes and the petrodollar collapses overnight. Furthermore, America's Gulf allies are terrifyingly vulnerable. They import 90% of their food, and 60% of their drinking water comes from fragile desalination plants that a single cheap drone could destroy. The United States is locked into this standoff to protect the petrodollar system that funds its power. Iran is locked in because abandoning its nuclear deterrent invites regime change. Neither side can afford to surrender, leaving the entire global economy perpetually held hostage.